So No Man's Sky is here, and it's finally out even after the 3-day delay, and it had no preload option and a pretty bumpy release with people complaining about massive frame rate drops and hitching. Minimum specs were provided stating that you could run the game on an i3 processor, what generation it doesn't say, and either a GTX 480 or an AMD Radeon 7870. Unfortunately, no recommended specs were provided, so that's where I come in with the entire line of the 10 series GPUs from NVIDIA benchmarked for you. The test system used is a Z77 motherboard from ASUS mated to the i7-3770K overclocked to 4.4 GHz. With 16 GB of GDDR3 RAM and a 500 GB SSD. While initial tests were attempted on this system, I replaced the SSD with an NVMe drive when hard spikes were hitting the drive. This cleared up the ridiculous frame drops that went as low as 8 frames per second on the GTX 1060. The benchmark was run using Fraps. It is a 60-second long benchmark starting from my home planet, or starter planet, flying directly up and turning directly back down once the asteroids had fully rendered. Settings were turned to max, including anisotropic filtering times 16 and FXAA, all in 1080p. As there were reports of frame rate variance from planet to planet, your mileage may vary. My particular planet was well populated with vegetation and life forms with a green tint to it. Starting with the Zotac GTX 1060 Mini, the average frame rates look good at 108 frames per second. However, in the chart we can see the hitching that everyone is talking about, with a minimum frame rate tanking to 30 FPS. This particular hitch was experienced when re-entering the planet's atmosphere. Locking the frame rate to 30 FPS only makes things worse, as the game will create a drop from your starting point of 30 FPS. Drops in the teens were experienced when locking the frame rate. We see similar results with the Gigabyte GTX 1070 Gaming G1 edition. While the average frame rate is 123.8 frames per second, minimum frame rate crashes to 62 frames per second. Another problem is presented here as well in the form of a maximum frame rate of 159 FPS. If you are running a 144Hz panel, for example, the fluctuation in FPS going above that has a tendency to cause screen tearing. While in most cases you would resolve this with capping the frame rate or using VSync, keep in mind that both of those options will lower the minimum frame rate during gameplay. Finally, we have a smooth playable experience at the fucking $700 price point with the MSI GTX 1080 Gaming X Edition. With an average frame rate of 140 and only dropping by 20 frames with a minimum of 120 and a maximum that appears to be even more under control than what we saw on the GTX 1070. Even with this card, my gameplay was interrupted twice with crashes over an 11-hour play period. Crashes showed hard faults on the RAM and peaks on CPU and read I/O and the GPU. When I posted a picture of my load being finished, commenters scoffed, saying I would not be able to play. I antagonized them by saying I would solve the problem by throwing money at it. This time I was correct. If you want a smooth experience and a laughable 1080p resolution for No Man's Sky, check out my live $2,000 Skylight gaming PC build video. How does the saying go? Money can't buy happiness, but it can buy you a playable experience in No Man's Sky, which is essentially the same thing. Hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below, and I will see you next Tuesday.